In today's episode of the Ask the Big podcast, we're going to be answering the question, how do I use the cooperating compensation agreement, or otherwise known as Form 220? Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Ask the Bic podcast, where you'll hear answers to the most frequently asked questions from North Carolina real estate brokers. Submit your questions via email to askthebic@gmail.com. That's askthebic@gmail.com.
Well, what's up, guys, and welcome to the Ask the Big podcast. My name is Russ Lockamy. I've been a broker in charge in the Raleigh, North Carolina area since 2011. We'll say that 13 years, I guess, we're going on now. So we're going to be answering a question that is on a lot of agents' minds right now, and that's, how do I use the new and improved Form 220, the Cooperating Compensation Agreement, this form right here, okay? So this actually isn't a brand new form, but it basically is. They've completely changed it July 1st when they did the forms changes, and it is a very, very important form to use now that compensation has been removed from the MLS. So as a buyer's agent, you're going to want one of these forms signed with every transaction. That is because this is basically your contract with either the listing agreement or listing firm and the seller or the seller on how you're going to get paid if the transaction closes. So now that we don't have compensation on the MLS, you're going to want one of these signed with every transaction. Now, technically, it's not required, but as a prudent buyer's agent, you're going to want one of these signed. So, how do we fill it out? Well, you'll see you've got the seller, buyer, property, your fee, and it's basically a 2-page document. Here's the signature page, but typically a listing agent is going to fill this out. That's what we're telling our firm. Listing agents at least partially fill this out with the seller's name, the property address, and the fee. If your listing agreement allows you to cooperate with a buyer's agent, you're going to check the box right here. Listing firm agrees to pay selling firm, the buyer's agent, and then you'll put whatever compensation the listing agreement allows you to put in paragraph 8 of the listing agreement. You can put right there. The term, counseling our agents to leave that portion blank as well, because again, this is not something that I would pre-sign and send to a buyer's agent, because the fear there is, if you have multiple buyer's agents that have multiple or non-exclusive agency agreements with the same buyer, and that buyer goes under contract, you've got multiple versions of this signed, then you could potentially have multiple buyer's agents claiming compensation has been earned. Okay, so what I would do as a disclosure of what the fee is being offered, I'd partially fill this out as a listing agent and not sign it, but send it partially filled out to the buyer's agent for that buyer's agent to sign, right? Gets a little confusing, but that's, if a listing agent, you're working as a buyer's agent, a listing agent has not filled this out, it does not have to be filled out by the listing side. The buyer's agent can fill it out and sign it, have their buyer sign it, and send it over. What's the best practices on sending it, right? So we know we cannot put compensation on the MLS any longer, so we cannot attach this form on the MLS at all. It actually even says it at the top, do not upload to the MLS, right? We can't put it in showing time, no services that are attached to the MLS either. So it has to be just sent to that buyer's agent. And Integra Realty, the firm that I work at in Raleigh, we've developed a way, because we use Google, we've developed a way to send the form automatically whenever agents schedule a showing for our listings through Google. So it's not going through ShowingTime. It's just using automations within Google within Gmail to automatically send that. You can kind of do a similar thing, setting up an email template. You can just text it whenever you get a showing request, but you could technically put it on your website. You can't link directly to it from the MLS, but you can put it on your website. So there's lots of ways that you can get that to buyers agents, right? But typically I am counseling our agents, sellers, for your listings. Go ahead and fill this out, how your listing agreement's done, and send it to those buyers agents. Now buyers agents will need to sign it, of course. Listing agents will need to sign it if they're paying. So who signs the form? So whoever is checked here. So if the seller is checked or the listing firm is checked, whoever's checked does have to sign the form. Okay, the buyer's agent has to sign the form, of course, because they're the one the form is for, to be compensated. And the buyer is going to have to sign the form. They're going to be required to sign the form if the amount is different than what the buyer's agency agreement that buyer agent has is different than what this form says. So if it's less or more, it's going to need the buyer's signature as well to, as you can see on the signature page, buyer, right here, buyer signs to acknowledge receipt of this form and consent to the fee agreement herein. So buyer has to 100% sign it if the amount is different. And look, it does not hurt to just have everybody to sign it. It's not going to hurt anything at all. But as far as who has to sign it, if listing cooperation has been allowed in the listing agreement on paragraph 8 of the listing agreement, then technically only the listing agreement has to sign it. Seller doesn't have to. And if the amount is the exact same as what's on the buyer agency agreement, then my understanding is that just the buyer's agent has to sign it. So I hope this clears up a little bit of confusion. There is a great frequently asked question legal Q&A from the North Carolina Realtors Association that I'm going to post a link to in the description of this. But I hope this answers your question. My name is Russ Lockamy with the Ask the Vic podcast, and as always, life is short, so take action, but don't take it too seriously. See you guys next week.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Ask the Vic podcast. To have your question answered on a future episode, email us at askthebic@gmail.com. That's askthebic@gmail.com.